You've got a huge variety of images here. Would you like to talk about where you found them?
Oh, that's a good starting question. Everywhere, actually, Sarah. So they're from the British Museum, V&A, Manchester Museum, recently in Barcelona, the Frederick Mars. Um, they're from buildings, art galleries. A lot of them are from books as well. I quite like the variety of finding images from different sources, and also these images have been made in different countries. So, and some of them are quite ancient.
Were there particular places that you were drawn to, or did you do a lot of research into where you were going?
I think that the first images were probably coming from churches and cathedrals, very early Christian images, say like Kilpeck Church, for example, in Herefordshire.
Mm.
Then I'm suddenly then contrasting it with, say, images that might be made in, say, Ethiopia or South America, and how images have been created by indigenous cultures and comparing shapes. I think that I'm also attracted to things where the animals, they're all quite animated, they're highly decorative, so they're patterned, um, and also there's humour in them as well. They're not all sort of serious.
Would you want to talk about the humour that you found a little more?
Well, I actually think animals are quite funny, and they certainly do things as joy. So, say for example, if you're walking along and you see a pigeon flying, sometimes it'll just fly and then allow itself just to almost drop out of the sky and then fly again. And I think that they're just having fun.
Yeah.
I think the fact that fish sometimes leap out of the water, maybe it's not just to catch a fly, but they kind of enjoy the sensation.
Yeah.
I think animals, they have that they're obviously being predated on and stuff, but I do think that animals and humans that have that they've got both got a sense of humour, I reckon.
Yeah. So when you're putting the animals together on the page, what's the decision making that goes into that? Do you like to have a mix of a contrast and complementary animals, or?
I think part of it is about process as well. So if the images that you're actually looking at here, they're a combination of sort of type of etching, collage, um, overdrawing, monoprinting, watercolor. So the process is part for me of the making of the drawing or the painting.
Mm.
I like putting things together where there's a sense of design, because I've come from a fine art background, but also a design background. I think that the process of experimenting with art materials pushes me forward in terms how I depict animals. So some of the images we're looking at, they're on momogami paper, where you actually almost distress the paper beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually scribbling out things and putting them back in again, which suggests animals hidden in the landscape. Um, I think that there's movement in the pattern behind the animals that cause them to be less static than
Mm-hmm.
simply a line drawing. So the process of making is an absolute love affair for me, as well as
Mm.
actually the combining of looking and drawing.
Where did you find the original images for Portraits of Us?
Well, you won't believe this, but actually, somebody sent me a whole bundle of old photographs, all black and white. Some of them were Edwardian, and then coming right through to maybe, I'm thinking, the 40s, 50s, 60s, maybe. There's no inscriptions of who the people are. They are just photographs, a random selection of photographs that I received from a
Mm.
friend.
And how did the images that we see now develop from the photographs you were given?
I think it was a response, Sarah, to a lot of politics that was happening in the world. And I wanted to do something where um, the people were given an identity that was different from the anonymous people I was seeing in the photographs, and it was a reaction to tough things that were going on in the news. So these people, I've made them so that they look, they're still alive in a sense, and they
Mm-hmm.
also mostly have some sort of interaction with an animal image and in a natural environment where they're free, and you don't know where the images have been made in terms of the countries that these people lived in. So I was sort of placing stamps that might have been from different countries, or they were just upbeat, happy images of humans being free, basically.
And what was the relationship between Portraits of Us and Posting Hope, one of your next projects?
So after the portraits from photographs, I sourced lots of envelopes that are vintage. I mean, some of them go right back to the 1930s. And I thought, right, I'm going to post out hope into the world by doing really upbeat paintings and drawings of people on envelopes. So I could imagine, I was imagining that I was post them out all over the place, all over the world, where there's no boundaries, there's no politics in any of this. You don't know what religion somebody is, you don't know what age they are, what language they speak, their ethnicity, anything. All you know that they're human beings living on one planet, and we're all free, and we all enjoy some sort of random interaction with an animal that just makes us feel really, really happy and good. And that's why I made them.
And what was the origin of the envelopes?
I've been collecting them for a while, actually. I did get some of them off eBay. Some of the postcards, as well as the envelopes, are found in charity shops. I'm really, really good when I go into a charity shop. I seem to find the most amazing things. I think sometimes I manifest something and then I actually find it in a charity shop. So they actually were absolute random findings and purchases. And also, once people know that you're doing something, they very generously give you things like old envelopes.
Right, which is quite fitting for the project. So, for Saints Who Love Animals, you created your own saints. Why was that important to you?
I think that when you actually think of patron saint of animals, they usually are masculine, usually male saints. There are a few like Saint Gertrude or Saint Meligan or Saint Colette, but I decided it would be really good to create certain saints for certain animals that were female, because I'd started amassing as well quite a lot of imagery from places like the Frederick Marr Museum, which is in Barcelona, or other imagery from different churches or museums. I kept going towards female imagery, and think that maybe animals and females actually are sort of quite closely linked, and they are, let's face it, underrepresented. Females are underrepresented in many ways.
And which saints influenced you the most, would you say?
Um, to be honest with you, I looked at a lot of saints and I found their history and their stories very interesting. Saints, so for example, Saint Malagal, who's from Wales, actually said no to hunting with hounds. She actually stood up to like the landowner and I think probably a king or a prince. So she was quite tough, but I actually wanted to create my own stories. So the saints that I've created have got their own story to do with animals that I'm going to invent. So it gives me a chance for a bit of storytelling.
So, the last chapter in your exhibition is art inspired by Hereford Cathedral. How have you responded to the building itself and the images of animals that you found?
That's a good question. Um, Stuart and myself, and also Samuel, did a lot of visual research in terms of taking photographs and walking around the building, both the inside and the outside. And of course, you've got the Mappa Mundi, which is extraordinary, and I've seen it so many times over the years. Yeah, we amassed quite a lot of photographic images, and I did do lots of drawings. But I think what I started feeling is that those images whether they're on stained glass or tombs, on the ceiling, all over the place, the corbels outside. They're so self-sufficient as images, and they tell their own story, that I've just suddenly realised that I couldn't and didn't want to take them out of the context in which they were created and displayed. So I haven't actually done anything really with those images. They feel just okay as they are. It's been the time spent in the Hereford Library and their rare collection of books that have really, really sort of got my imagination going. I was looking at something the other day that was a 13th century book. It was a manuscript. I was allowed to actually look at this extraordinary book and the marginalia and the illuminations. These tiny little animals sort of intertwined with the sort of the Latin text. That's what gets my imagination going, is taking one image and mixing it with other images from the cathedral's library collection and making my own stories, really, as facsimile marginalia or sacred pages from a book. That's the direction I seem to be heading in, which is, it's sort of answering my own brief, really, about the whole idea of animals and humans being intertwined, because in the way that I'm actually using the images from the library, I'm bringing together and creating my own story of humans interacting with animals in a compassionate way, with a sense of curiosity, looking at bestiaries and the wonderful interconnectedness that there should be between humans and animals, which I think probably we've lost. We don't have as many interactions with wildlife as we used to have. Farming methods have obviously changed. So I'm sort of in some ways stepping back to a bygone time where we were more connected to animals. So I think my art's probably aiming to, in my own imagination, to bring that balance back.
In film, our inherent connection with animals is shown in many different ways. When screenwriters are incorporating animals into their stories, they will often show how we inhabit and coexist on this planet together. And to me, that's something inescapable when writing a story involving animals. And I'll give you a few examples of this. In stories, you can have an animal represent a human, or more so, represent the same characteristics they have. So, for example, in the Michael Mann film Collateral, the cold-blooded hitman Vincent sees a lone coyote cross the road, the same hunter in the wild as there is in our human world. Or in a simpler way, you get a companion as well. So the human character with their dog that always is loyal and defends them, like a Turner and Hooch. Or you get, in the same vein as that, a human hunting down an animal that is laid claim on a place, like in Jaws, the beach in Jaws. The shark is eating the humans, and we are hunting down that creature. It gives us purpose. And then the flip side of that, you have animals journeying through a human world. So like the donkey in EO, it used to be a place inhabited by animals. It's now inhabited by humans, and animals are getting used to that change.
We've always woven animals into our stories, whether they be allegorical cautionary tales, celebratory stories of country life, or believed to be simply factual accounts. In areas with a rich agricultural history, such as Herefordshire, animals have long been an important part of our lives. They protected us, fed us, and kept us company. Here, there are several well-known folk stories involving animals or animal-like creatures. The Dragon of Morderford, which was first sighted in 1230 and yet remains part of Morderford's culture, with a green wyvern on the wall of the main church. The Mermaid of Marden, who stole a church bell when it fell into the river. And the Black Dog of Hergest, said to have inspired the Hound of the Baskervilles. A satanic black dog also plays an important role in the tale of the Worgen Stone.
Each of these, in their way, illustrates our connection to animals, their permanent proximity in our lives, including in our fears and fantasy.
In games, animals can serve two purposes. One being to the game's mechanics, where they are like traversal and that's it. And the other being to the narrative, where they're only in the story, but they serve no gameplay purpose. And there is a game that combine these two. For example, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a great example that combines using your horse as traversal and also storage for your equipment, and also serves as a side character in the game story itself. And that is something only the entertainment medium of games can present. Because with like a film, you can't interact with the film, you're only a witness. While games allow you to interact with the world and the environment. You also grow a deeper bond with the horse throughout your experience with it, growing more and more intertwined with one another. And that is something that is very inherent to how Red Dead Redemption 2 is structured as both a game and also a story.
And do you find that your research and artwork has changed your relationship with animals at all?
I think absolutely. Animals have figured in my artwork for as long as I can remember. But I think that I'm trying to make artwork where they are incredibly respectful of an animal and they're celebratory. I think that there is a connection that I'm finding between animal and human, because I'm looking at such old images. You know, you're talking about pre-Christians sometimes. Those images are they're monumental to me in some ways because they're so ancient, and I think that they're images where humans want to celebrate animals with great respect,